Welcome to the All Access Podcast from the experts at Tebis. Each episode, we'll talk about technology topics, trends, or solutions that manufacturers need to know in today's rapidly evolving times. Sit back, enjoy the discussion, and let us know what you think.
Welcome to another episode of All Access Podcast. I am your host, Michael Thiessen. I'm talking to you from our studio over here in Troy, Michigan at Tebis America. Today we have quite an interesting topic that I think all of you guys will like. It's a topic that we get confronted every single day when we drive around with our cars, when we look in our TVs, when we look at the stories that are going around. It impacts us 24/7. So I'm very excited to talk with a good friend of mine. It's a good friend that has a very worldly view because he has been around the world already a couple of times by looking into what you're doing at your company, how it affects your company, and what can be improved. The topic that we're going to be talking about is the labor shortage. And hopefully in a year from now or 2 years from now, whenever you listen to this particular podcast, this has all changed. I hope so. Because if this hasn't changed, then we're doing something seriously wrong. But unfortunately, I think some of the forecasts that I've seen, it is going to be a long haul until we've got this entire thing figured out. So this thing is all about attracting skilled labor. What do we do in our manufacturing environment to retain this very incredible labor force that we have with skilled laborers that are there? And what do we do with this huge gap that we have in our manufacturing society? So, unfortunately, of course, we all know that this has been an item that has been going on for years. This is not a very new topic. This has been a topic that has been going on for quite a while, that the challenges that we're facing in the manufacturing industry is real, especially over this last year with this entire COVID-19 pandemic. It really highlighted it. And we recognize that this is an item that we need to face and we need to figure out, and we need to figure this out quickly. Just to give you a couple numbers up front, Harbor Results, who is a very dear partner of us and also a very good friend, they just recently did a survey where they have asked the manufacturers about the labor shortage and how they're coping with it. So if you have a chance, look at Harbor Results at the survey that was done in 2019 for pre-COVID. And then also this survey really came out and said that the tooling companies, so your mold and your die industries, has over 79% of open positions available for skilled labor. I mean, let that sink in. 79% of open positions are available for skilled labor. And I just recently looked at the numbers here for Michigan. And the number of unfulfilled jobs in Michigan that are open in the manufacturing industry, now get this, are over 100,000 open positions. And this is just the recent numbers that came out. In August 2020 study, the current unemployment rate is 5.2%. So we have a huge area where we could attract people into the manufacturing environment, and we need skilled labor in order to manufacture and produce our goods. So this is what we're going to be talking about throughout the course of the next 40 or so minutes. My good friend and co-host or guest on this particular podcast is Mr. Julian Odeh. He's been in the industry doing consulting work, analyzing of your company's processes, of what you're doing at your company in order to increase your efficiency and optimize your processes. And he's been doing this for the last 20 years. And why did I invite him into this particular podcast? That's very simple. Because he has been around the world. He has been looking into companies in Germany and Europe and US, as well as in China and the Asian market. And he can bring a lot of good, interesting ideas and topics to the table and what's going on in different parts of the world, but also here in the US and what we need to do. So with that said, Julian Odeh, who is the team manager for the international consulting efforts at our sister company at Tebis AG. Welcome, Julian, and thank you for being on this episode.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. And I think it's a very interesting and very important topic you're having as a theme today. And I'm happy to give my input.
I know this topic, Julian, is impacting all of us. I mean, we are in the manufacturing industry. You are in the manufacturing industry, and you're sitting currently in Germany. This labor shortage or this skills issue that we have, how is it in Germany?
Yeah, funny enough, once you asked me about this to be a co-host on the show, I was having a conversation just the other week with a German company who happens to own a company in Michigan. And the CEO came to me and we were discussing how to optimize the process, the normal things you would discuss. And he came up with this topic as well. He said, I have this issue in Germany that here our workforce is decreasing in the manufacturing industry quite significantly. There's a couple of reasons to it, and he pointed out that he has it on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. But with pointing at the US, he was saying it was worse there, actually. And I think it has one or two reasons which are apparent. One is, from my point of view, that in Germany we have a little bit of a different system to bring up skilled workers versus the industry in America. That's one thing, but nevertheless, all Western countries, people tend to go more to higher education rather than manufacturing. And I think this is the main problem, and this needs to be addressed with different topics. And I think we're going to touch them later on. But one is, of course, the money, but it's not only the money which brings people into a certain profession.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the problem. A lot of these younger generations that have come up over the last, I'm going to reach back to maybe the last 10, 15 years. There has been this drive, at least over here in the US, that we're trying to push our kids into colleges, into universities, to what you said, into higher learning, and completely forget the regular tradesmen. I mean, a problem is that we have over here, we have a lack of plumbers, a lack of electricians, some of the very basic tradesmen. And I mean, if I'm going, and I don't know if you know who the dirty job guy is, Mike Rowe, and he has started this awesome foundation where we should really think about our trades channels, our trades groups, and get our kids into the trade, because not every kid is made for university. And we should really look into this. And I think this is a very systemic issue. I mean, over here in the US, in high school and colleges, in high schools predominantly, we've gotten rid of shop, automotive kind of learning. Is it in Germany the same way that in the high schools that some of the very traditional trade items have been replaced by whatever it is, computer or music or sports, as it is over here?
Well, there's a mix, actually. If the German system has a gymnasium, which is like a little bit of the higher learning or prepping for higher learning. Obviously, more and more kids get pushed by their parents into this section of the school. Then you have the middle school, and you have a little bit of a lower school, which is going till 9th grade, and then the other one goes till 10th grade, and the gymnasium goes till the 12 or 13, depending on the state. But when I was in school, at least they had still shop, and I went to shop learning, and they had also cooking and all these kind of things. They still do that, but it got subsidized in some places by, as you said, computer courses and other things which seem more valuable for some people. And I think this is a little bit of a wrong road they are taking, since you need to, as you said, some kids are made for this and some kids are made for that, and let them try out different things. And this is how a kid finds his way, not by saying, okay, let's do this, and then they never see the other side. Because I think there's a great potential in doing something like you call dirty work, and plumbers and house builders and construction. I think you can start a great business once you have learned the trade, and you can be a small business entrepreneur and build up your business and make good money.
I mean, I grew up in the 70s. Of course, this dates me now. And I grew up with erector sets and Legos and building stuff. And that was some of the toys that I got when I was little. And those kind of items, they're not really sought after by today's kids. Today's kids, what is their most desired toy? And game stations and computer games and all that kind of stuff. That seems to be the latest, and I shouldn't say latest, but the most desired toy for younger kids. And of course, parents, they have to keep up with the Joneses, and I have to purchase that to their kids because otherwise they're left over. And who does erector sets nowadays anymore? Let's be real. But that is, of course, an issue then, because we're not getting these kids hands-on early with a wrench or a hammer or a nail or anything like this in order to kind of hone their skills. All what we're giving them is gaming stations. Do you see that the same way?
Yeah, I think this is up to the parents actually, and a little bit of the school, but more the parents because there should be a mix. And I am not opposing any PC. I grew up in the 80s, a little bit later than you, and it was the age of when computer games evolved, and I'm still happy to play once in a while a computer game, though time has become very short with the kids, as you probably know. But I think if you open kids up for the new things, like, of course, computer games, they can have good effects on the kids as well. But as you said, I think it's very important, and this is not to underestimate, to get them into working with their hands, and that involves garden things, that involves building something with your bare hands out of wood or something, and this needs to be addressed in school as well. So it needs to be a mix of what you can provide as a parent at home, but has to be part of the schooling system as well. So it's part state, part people, and neither can take themselves out of this equation.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at the other spectrum now, because obviously we need to have some type of leadership that can guide us in the right direction. And for that leadership, I'm looking a little bit at our leaders for the U.S. here in Washington, as well as maybe you in Germany. You have your own leadership. And just recently, I've read a report, which was a report for Congress, and it was a congressional research service that did some analysis. Now, this analysis is a couple of years back, but this still is an item that is still active. And it says this: in addition to global competitiveness issues, which of course is true, the tool and die and mold industry may face a skills shortage. The average age of tool makers is, get this, 52 years is the average age of tool makers, and many experienced tool makers are expected to retire in the next few years. Managers of tool and die companies say that there is a lack of workers with sufficient training in mathematics and in technology applications to replace workers as they retire. So if the average age is 52 years old, and this report has been now a couple years old, guess what? We're right there where these guys are going to retire, and who do we have to replace them? That's a huge issue.
Yep. I think this is both sides of the Atlantic, as well as, let's say, Japan. I do, as you said, I do international projects, and I'm involved in many of them globally, and just with a large original manufacturer over in Japan right now, and they have the same topic: lack of skilled workers. They have to deal with the old workers retiring. It's a little bit longer, the retirement. The age is a little bit further than in Germany, but we're talking 65, 67, depending on the country. And I think this is all Western countries or all developed countries have this topic. Many reasons are there. And I think companies have to be active themselves now. Put kids and make the job interesting for them. Maybe send them to a higher school, give them opportunities to evolve and make the job interesting. I think one topic is the 3D printing, which is not as dirty, let's say, as the original subtractive milling, and it is a real interesting thing because it's working with the computer and creating something and seeing it in front of you with your own eyes, rather than this cell which mills something, and you know how it is. You don't see much, and I think it's this might be something to look into for companies to attract younger people into the trade.
I mean, it's all about technology. And even in a recent study I've read too, that of course, what we need to do in the manufacturing industry, and especially I'm looking at potentially this system that we call home, Tebis, is make it in such a way that it looks, I'm going to call it sexy, for these youngsters to look at, and to make it almost like a game for these, what I call gamers, to come into this work atmosphere, to make it really interesting and exciting and easy to use and highly functional. I said this recently, last week, to a company that I was visiting, that we talked about automating. And automating, of course, is a big portion of how we can potentially solve the issues that we're running into with the skilled labor shortage. I said to him, so if I'm guessing, you're probably end 50s, beginning 60s. And he goes, yeah, you got that right. And I said, so what's going to happen when you're going to retire? Are you going to leave your head here? Because we can chop it off and leave it here on the desk. But when he looked at me and I said, no, I'm not trying to be cannibalistic or anything like that here. But what is going to happen with your knowledge? Are you going to take that with you? Well, yeah. I said, so what's going to happen to this company without you being here? Let's be serious about this. You need to make sure that your knowledge is contained within the company in some way or fashion. And if we're talking in the milling area, in the CNC manufacturing, or in the die making or the mold making area, you need to have some kind of way to maintain this knowledge in some type of a container. If that is in the automation of the automating of your tool paths or in the automating of your processes, then so be it. I said, you do not leave your head here when you leave. Otherwise, this company is going downstream within the next 5 to 10 years. And he looks at me and he said, you know what, Michael, I never thought of it this way. You're absolutely correct. He goes, yes, we need to automate as much as we can. And that's a huge topic, where one of the items that companies need to do, and especially after COVID-19, if it taught us anything, it is that we need to automate, that we need to look into this entire process of automation, especially in the mold and die business. Do you see the automation happening around the world?
Yes, and a little bit sadly, Asian countries are more open than the European countries towards automation. I would say the US is somewhere in between. They're usually open for this topic, but once you get in touch with the unions, then you are really into trouble when you're talking about standardization and automation, because the first thing they think of is that's going to cut the labor force, and that's what they don't want. But what they don't realize is that there is a shift, because you may automate something on the machine, but nevertheless, you need somebody to program and make this automation work. And that's where people evolve to from machines. From my point of view, mold makers and die makers are the best programmers of machines, and doesn't matter which kind of machines, because they know what's happening outside. And once they evolve from the machine to the CAD or the CAM department, they are totally in the topic, and there's nothing what they create on the screen which is not possible to manufacture outside. And that's a big problem I'm facing a lot of times, that there is skilled people on the CAM and CAD, but they have never seen the outside world, which is on the machines. And then there's trouble what they are creating, little radiuses which are not possible to manufacture, and things like this. The other way around is when you evolve from the machine. So that's something of a training a company should really think of. Rather than putting somebody on the job and train him just on what they do, they should train him through the company, maybe bottoms up, and then you really know what's going on, and then you have the best out of that worker what you can get. And that's the way companies have to think, but when training and getting people up to speed. But I see a reluctance on training people because they're scared they move to next company just because they get more money. Well, that's a thing, but you have to still try and make it attractive to stay. And there's other measures you have to do, but that's, I think, the way to go. Train your own people, bottoms up, send them to higher schools maybe where it's just about the trade, and then you get the most out of these people. And this is how you can save the trade, I think.
You hit the nail, I think, right on the head. Training is one of the things that companies over the U.S. here are not taking serious. Maybe it's because that they're in a crunch right now where they're seeing that these old timers are right now retiring with all of these experience in their heads. And now they're rushing and trying to get these kids in there, not giving them any training and hoping that these kids are going to stay there. And then the problem is they have this high turnover rate of individuals that are starting at the company, had high expectations, didn't really like the atmosphere, didn't like the stuff that they were not getting trained, and are leaving again. And I think training, and especially where I'm located with our software products, I'm always getting asked the following question. So, Michael, how long does it take to have somebody learn your system? And I always give the same answer. And the answer is shocking to some of the people, but it's real. I said, the only thing that inhibits somebody to learn my system is their own mind. If they're not open-minded, if they're not open to accept new ways, new strategies, and if they're fighting this process every single step of the way, then you're having a harder time learning this. But if a person is open to learning new processes, then this particular person will actually be a good user and a good programmer. And that's what we're seeing even when we train unskilled individuals. And that's what is necessary, because it is very difficult, and we're hearing this from our customers, they cannot find skilled labor. So what we need to do is, okay, so if we cannot find skilled labor, then we need to provide them the skills in order to do the jobs in our company.
Exactly.
And that involves training. I mean, here it says in the same research that was done for the Congress that the National Association of Manufacturers found that 70% of their respondents were particularly concerned about the supply of skilled production workers, which includes tool and die. More than half of the respondents said skilled shortages are affecting their level of production, and a third said that it compromises their quality and their productivity. So what we need to do is we need to enhance the skill to some of these individuals that don't have the skill, and we got to do this by training. If that means through apprenticeship programs, but not rushing it. please don't rush to get these guys trained just so that you have a body that can turn a wrench. Give them the proper skills, because that will have a longevity effect that a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, this person is still going to be employed by you.
Yes, I totally agree with this, because it's got to be a long-term relationship, and this is only built by trust. And maybe it's up to the companies to give the younger people trust that they're not just another body which that gets exchanged by the next dent in the economy. No, you put some money in terms of training. You put time in. You maybe give them a godfather who helps them through the company in order to get him up to speed. And I think this gets repaid. I think that gets repaid.
Now, let's add some other level to this. I was just recently talking to our friends over here about the pictures that we're seeing on the news about these container ships in LA just stacked up in the hundredth folds on the ports with goods that come from overseas. And then, of course, the next item comes in. Okay, if these goods are manufactured overseas and they're just stuck there and we don't have enough truck drivers and stuff like that to deliver them, well, then we should maybe manufacture them over here. Then we don't have that situation. The problem then is it's this vicious cycle. Well, we don't have the labor. We don't have the talent anymore. We have to get this talent. And this has happened many, many years ago when we just went away from this talent pool and didn't grow this talent pool. And I know, for example, you in Germany, you have this beautiful soccer club, Bayern Munich, that have this talent pool where they started growing talent from the bottom up in order to ensure that you have good soccer players moving up the lines. If that would not be done and putting the effort into the youngsters with soccer, you would have a major shortage of soccer players because all of them would be going over to basketball. And that's the same thing in our industry and our skilled labor. We need to make sure that we provide these youngsters the necessary know-how. Apprenticeships, that is something that you have in Germany with these technical schools. When they come out of high school, they go in these technical schools. I mean, from that perspective, do you see less people go into these technical schools, and that's why you have a little bit of that shortage too? Or what do you see with these technical schools?
Yes and no. I think it's growing again a bit, but we have two things there. We have the technical schools, let's say for middle-level workers, and then you have the higher schools, which are also very tailored to technical, like designers, but designers for molds, designers for any gears, designers in any fashion. I'm happening to be teaching in one of them, project management, and I see the classes are quite full, and schools and especially bigger companies like, for instance, I have some people from DMG, some people from Bosch, some people from automobile suppliers. They're all sending their people to these schools, and I think they have seen this problem coming for a while. They have put every work lower level back then to other countries in order to save labor costs. And then all of a sudden there comes the 2008 dent in the economy, and they a lot of these companies broke down also abroad, and they had to take back some of the load of this work, and they didn't have the labor anymore. They couldn't manufacture it, and so problems became more apparent, and even to the management, who was always looking at numbers and where can I save the next dollar or the next euro for that matter. And now they're rowing back. So I see a lot of tool shops in the big original manufacturers opening up again, employing more and more people, same in the molds industry, because they know they have to keep some in-house And of course, they're going to give some outside, but maybe not anymore that far away, just because, yes, we have a global economy, but not everything can be produced somewhere else just to save costs. Some things should be held in-house just to be sure that things are running even when things are not so great.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I think maybe our big threes that are over here, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, actually Stellantis now, maybe they should look at some of our smaller manufacturers, some of our smaller mold makers over here and work with them, because right now they're in a debacle where they're not getting the molds and dies done from overseas as quickly as they wanted to, or the chip shortage that they can't get enough chips. Maybe what we should do is work with some of our companies over here, help them make these molds and dies closer closer by their facilities, in order to avoid that we're running into this particular issue again, where we have issues with the supply chain of getting us these items from overseas.
Yeah, I think you can't go back to single market, where you in the US, okay, is an exception because it's a big country, but I'm looking at Europe. It's all linked together, and worldwide we're linked. You cannot do everything in house. It's like a company. A country is like a company. There's a level which the University of Aachen and other colleges have defined. What is a good level of producing in-house as a certain size of a company? And that's about 70% you should produce in-house. And maybe that kind of applies to countries as well. Some things you should produce in-house, and some things you should get from outside because it's just not worth doing inside. But we should move away from this topic where saving the last dime and dollar just to produce a product a little cheaper in order to sell maybe more. But that way, this whole chain gets in motion. And one thing is very important in this thing, because the consumer itself has then also to realize, if I'm supporting this kind of way that we produce more here, then I have to deal with a little higher prices here and there, and can't be so cost sensitive as we are all. And I don't take myself out. I look at every price. But in the end, if I'm looking at every price, and I'm always looking at, okay, I buy the Korean TV because the German one is too expensive, because the labor, and it's this chain. It's up to everybody to think differently and see what is worth for the economy as a whole, and what is my part in this. So it's a global theme, and it comes down to single decisions of people.
I think you're right. Obviously, our consumer nowadays is only looking at the cheapest. It's no longer looking at quality or making sure that your neighbor has the amount of work, and therefore I'm purchasing his product rather than another product. And I just talked recently with another company over here, and I'm just super impressed by this particular company. I'm not going to mention their name, but hopefully when they listen to this podcast, they know exactly who they are. But this particular company, German influence, his father was the founder of the company, and they believe in hiring young kids from high school, advocating in high schools to work for them. And they're actually putting them through somewhat of an apprentice school and teaching them the right items so that they can grow up. And then he just has recently an individual that he has brought up in his company for many years now. And now this youngster, he's looking at, well, maybe I want to do aerospace work. And therefore, he wants to broaden his horizon with looking at aerospace work. And this gentleman said, well, yeah, it's going to cause a little bit of an issue where, I'm losing this very bright kid but it's part of this kid's growing up. And we should not be afraid that if I'm training this individual, that he's going to go somewhere else. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that we in our society, we can make our decision. And if we believe that, you know what, I really want to work for the aerospace industry, then do it. It's another entity, but we should not skimp out on the training. So is the only answer to maintain these kids at our companies by bombarding them with very high salaries in order to attract them in? Or how can I attract these youngsters to come in?
I think it's two, maybe three things. One is, of course, it's always the money, and the money has to be at least okay, to a certain degree better, because you have to keep in mind, we are talking about shift workers in many companies, which give a part of their private life up to work late hours. We call it ghost shifts, and usually the young kids get sent to the ghost shifts, and there's a couple older ones which are maybe supervising that, and the rest is in the day shift. So you have to work your way up to the day shift maybe, or they have a rotoring system where you are. Doesn't matter how old you are, you get switched every other week. So that's got to be paid, because it's taking a toll on your health and on your private life. That's number one. Okay, that's the pay. And then the second thing is, I think attracting it is one thing I said when we started is making an investment in your employees always pays back, gives you relationship, and the relationship is built over a certain time. And I think then the dollar here or there more doesn't make a difference, because there's a relationship between the owner or a relationship between the company and you. That's the second thing. But the worker has to feel appreciated. And another thing might be, keeping them the work-life balance somehow in a level, because that's scaring a lot of kids away. And the only way you can do this by, you pay them more. That's the one thing. But the other thing is, you need to automate, and you said this before. You need to automate and make people capable of letting things run by themselves, and prepare things in the daytime and let them run in the nighttime. And that way you can make this job more attractive, besides new technologies. So these are the things that come to my mind to make it attractive for younger kids. Again, good pay. Work-life balance is okay, but it's of course a little bit harder, but you get paid more. And make a bond, build a relationship. And this is only done by investing in people.
Mm-hmm. So, and one of the final comments, I mean, obviously you and I, we work for a company that is in the technology business. What can Tebis do, for example? What can the CAD/CAM environment do to attract some of these people, some of these, I'm going to call them semi-non-skilled labor? What can we do?
I think we, as Tebis Consulting, obviously have the mission to keep the business and this means the manufacturing business in the Western countries, and make it attractive and make them capable of having it here. And that means getting more efficient. And that doesn't mean cutting people always. This means just rearranging labor, standardizing. This word is already dead, Industry 4.0, but standardizing is a big part. Interact with each other, make systems, interfaces between systems better, and helping them to be able to have this high wage labor and still produce here, because you get a higher quality and you get more complex goods, which might not be possible in other countries where the wages are lower. And the second thing is, I think the software, as you said already as well, has to take a road where it's more and more easy to use. And that means, it's sometimes somewhat complicated to interact with the software because it has a lot of menus and going and screens, and it's not self-explaining. And we can train, which Tebis does very well, because we have an implementation department which helps you on the job. On the job training is key to your success. And the second thing is making the software easier, which is a process over time. I think Tebis took a right step, but it's still a couple steps to self-explaining and easy use. But we're on the right track there.
Awesome. Well, Julian, we've covered a lot of ground over these last, 40 minutes. You know what? I really, truly thank you for being on this particular episode, talking about the work shortage and the labor shortage. Any final advice from you for our listeners of what they should be doing in order to kind of cope and give them some final notes of what they can do?
What they can do is go out there, have somebody in charge of training in your company, get to the high schools, make the job attractive, look into new manufacturing possibilities as the 3D printing and that kind of things. And I saw this in Michigan already. You have this, the metal printing and everything. So there's a new route to take, and put money and time in younger people in order to deal with this topic. Otherwise, you will be not around the block for long anymore, because your workforce will decrease and nobody's coming to steer the boat after that. So I can only highly advise to look in your area, especially. You should not look abroad or anywhere. You should look in the next high school next door. Why look far away? And I'm always supporting I'm coming from a little town, and I'm always supporting the businesses and the schools here around. And that's what you should do as a company. This way you interact with the community better, and you have a high reputation in your area. So get out there and make it happen now.
Wonderful. Well, Julian, from my side, thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate that you're on this particular show. And I wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, Michael, and happy to be here. And if you ever have me on the show again, I would be very glad to join you again.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Let's put some of these comments and ideas that Julian provided, as well as that I have, to good use. I mean, let's just look at those things. What do we need to do? What do you need to do as a company in the industry, in the manufacturing industry? So first, look at your high schools. Look at your colleges, go to them, have your representative of your company at these career functions, and get out there. Get in front of these youngsters, because if they don't know what you are doing, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because you could be touching that one person that is really interested in manufacturing. Communicate then with your local educators about what skills that you are needing for future graduates. Make sure that you look at your job descriptions of what you're looking for, and in order to attract these people, include what kind of tech skills you need in order that you can get the right candidates. Talk with your software company of what kind of possibilities that maybe your software supplier can do in order to train some of these workers. Recruit populations that maybe are underrepresented at your companies. What I'm saying here, look at women in the workforce. Maybe this could be an avenue. If I look at Harbor results and some of their surveys, that is one of the items that we need to do, is diversify our processes in our manufacturing industry. Look at your AMBA workforce survey too, of the American Mold Builders Association. Go to their site too and look at what they had in store there too. Beef up your apprenticeship programs, because that is key. You need to train your individuals, and you need to give them enough training so they can produce. And of course, and we said this over and over again, automate your processes, because if your experienced people are going to leave, this is going to leave a huge dent. So I hope that you get some valuable advice from us that have been in the industry for quite some time, and hopefully we're able to give you some points of what to do. But I think you all know these things already, and potentially you're doing this already. And hopefully some of our leadership in Washington, or maybe our state leadership, is listening to this podcast as well, and they can give some guidance, some directions of what to do, because we really need to step it up in order to shorten the skills gap and make our production back here in the USA again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you give us some comments back. We're always happy to get your comments. And if you have some ideas for some future podcasts as well, send that to us. We'd be happy to discuss this with individuals. And I'm looking forward to our next episode that we're going to bring to you from here in Michigan. I thank you for joining us, and I wish you all a good day.
Thank you for joining this episode of All Access. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about manufacturing technology solutions and Tebis's capabilities, visit our website at Tebis. That's TEBIS.com.